Hey, so this is for Slim. What up, sis? I figured why not go ahead and just represent my argumentation for why I hold to the early date of the writing of the book of Revelation. Since we're Bible believers, I think it's more important that we deal with the internal evidence. And I don't really hear many people dealing with the internal evidence. So I think you will appreciate this. First, Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, Jesus does tell John he's about to show him things that must happen soon. Even down here, skipping down to verse 3, Jesus says, the time is near. Verse 19, Jesus tells John to write down the things that he's seen, the things that are, that is present, and then the things which will take place after, as in after those things, the things that are to be fulfilled. These are called time texts. They indicate a timetable. Now, I believe that John wrote this and received this under the reign of Nero. John does tell us he's on the island of Patmos because of his testimony of Jesus Christ. We should also consider the fact that both Paul and Peter died for that same testimony under the reign of Nero. So it doesn't really seem all that logical, at least to me, that, you know, Peter and Paul will be killed in the mid 60s AD, and then 30 years later, John is exiled for that same testimony that they died for. You see, Domitian was tyrannical, but he wasn't tyrannical against the Christians, the group called the Christians. He was he was a paranoid dude. He was paranoid against the Senate because the Senate had a history, an extensive one, of killing the Caesars. But anyways, back to the text. So Revelation 11, verses 1 and 2, John is told to get up and to measure the temple. So consider this. If John wrote this 25 years after the destruction of the temple, then why wouldn't he make mention of that in the writing? Why wouldn't he ask the angel, hey, why are you asking me to measure a temple that was destroyed 25 years prior? It's no longer standing. I used to be one of those folks that be like, see, this implies there has to be a third temple. But where does the text indicate that? I had to be honest with myself and say, no, it doesn't. The fact that John does not bring that up, such an important detail, tells me that this had to be written while it was still standing. So then before AD 70, even before the siege, because I mean, if Eusebius found it so important and Josephus, who was actually there, thought it was so important to write about these details, it really doesn't seem likely to me that John, writing 25 years later, would not mention that important detail. Next, I want to show you my favorite piece of evidence because it reminds me so much of Daniel chapter 11. You see, in Daniel chapter 11, Gabriel is telling Daniel what's going to happen involving the king of the north and the king of the south, with the beautiful land in between. And these are all events that are happening before the birth of Jesus, actually leading up to the birth of Jesus. Now, the thing is, the angel is describing multiple kings. Gabriel's talking about multiple kings, but he's only identifying them as two individual kings, the king of the north and the king of the south. We see that same thing right here in Revelation chapter 17. Verse 9, here's the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. The 7 mountains is Rome. The woman was Jerusalem. The reason the woman is sitting on the 7 hills or on Rome is because this symbolizes the Sanhedrin's reliance upon Rome. Remember, the Jews wanted to kill Jesus, but they needed the Romans to get the job done. Also, here's another historical fact. The Sadducees were the ones who were controlling the temple at that time, during the time of Jesus, and Rome was the one who was appointing them. So keep paying attention because it really gets deep. Verse 10, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. Let me show you the historical accuracy of that one verse. Julius was the first. Augustus was the second, and he was the Caesar who was ruling during the birth of Jesus. Tiberius Caesar was the third, and was most likely the Caesar on that coin that Jesus said, render to Caesar's the things which are Caesar's. Gaius Caesar was the 4th, Claudius Caesar was the 5th, and he was the reigning Caesar during the book of Acts and some of the New Testament writings, not all of them, but some. So these are the 5 who have fallen. The one who is, that is the 6th one. Guess who the 6th one is? You guessed it, that's Nero. So Peter, in his letter to the churches over in Bithynia and them, he's talking about his departure. He's talking about being martyred. He's getting ready to be martyred, and that was under the reign of Nero. Paul, speaking to young Timothy, saying, I have fought the good fight, I've run the race, I'm getting ready to be poured out like a drink. He knows he's going to be martyred. He's about to be martyred under the reign of Nero. Now peep this, the angel says the other one has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. Peep the accuracy of this line right here. Galba was the seventh Caesar, but check this out. He only reigned for 6 months. He, in a very literal sense, only reigned for a little while, or remained for a little while. The beast of Revelation was not just one person. It was the line of Caesars. It represented the seat of Caesars, just like the false prophet represented the seat of the high priest. But we ain't gonna get into that one. Let's keep going. The beast that was and is not is himself an eighth, and is one of the seven. Now, Flavius Vespasian was the seventh emperor. Now, the interesting thing about Flavius is not he's not belonging to the line of Caesar. Caesar is not just the title, it's also the name. It's the family name. Flavius Vespasian, or Flavius, I guess you could say, is the new succeeding line of kings or emperors or whatever you want to call it. But he himself is the eighth, but watch this, he belonged to the seventh. In what way did he belong to the seventh? He was one of the generals of Nero. So, in that real way, he was the eighth, yet he was of the seven. Continuing on, the angel says, and he goes to destruction. Titus, the son, one of the sons of Flavius Vespasian here, he's the one who his father sent to go destroy the city in AD 70. So Titus was the one who went to destruction. Now, what about the rest of it, right? Let's go there. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received the kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. Now, the interesting thing here is, even with those kings that I mentioned, or those Caesars that I mentioned, we still have 10 kings there. Let me show you. AD 69 was known as the year of 4 emperors, or 4 Caesars. And you can read about this in Tacitus's writing, I believe is the 12 Caesars. After Galba was assassinated, there were 2 other Caesars that ruled for a very short time between him and Vespasian. If you notice beneath me, Otho became Caesar. He ruled from January 15 to April 17, and he committed suicide. Then we have Vitellius, who ruled from April to December 20th, where he was assassinated during the Roman Civil Wars. In December of that year is when Flavius Vespasian began to reign as emperor. And he reigned for 10 years. Now, excluding Titus Vespasian, who was not emperor during this time, go ahead and count that up. We got 10 kings. Now, I challenge anybody to prove me wrong by fitting Domitian into that model as the 6th Caesar, or the 6th king. If I'm wrong about that, make that make sense then. Now, I get it. People go on talking about, but Irenaeus said, you know what? Irenaeus said a few questionable things. The church fathers were not infallible. They said goofy things. They would be on point with some things, and they'd be completely off point in some other things. So it seems to me that there's more evidence historically and without bias proving that, yes, John wrote this, or had to have written this, before the temple was destroyed, specifically under the reign of Nero. And then if we consider the fact that John himself concealed Nero's name in Revelation 13 with 666, then all of a sudden it makes sense. And even with the textual variant 616, it still comes out to Caesar Nero. So Jesus says, Revelation 22:10, he says, do not seal up the words of this prophecy, of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. What does that mean? Here's a practical question. Is 2024 near to AD 95? Is it even near to AD 65? We got to be very careful with what we choose to allegorize and what we choose to take literal. To start bringing in the whole 1 day of 1,000 years like a day, man, that's allegory. So let's not do that. So in short, I believe we can absolutely prove from the text itself that John wrote this sometime before the destruction of the temple, prophesying the destruction of the temple and all the events surrounding it. And no, I do not believe that the final resurrection has happened, nor the great white throne judgment. That's still yet to come. Anyways, deuces.